What's up everybody, this is Ven, and I welcome you to the M.O.C Spotlight where we take apart what you build. For today's episode, we'll be going over the Headless Horseman, created and posted on our message boards by Mohamed Marei, or Marei. Now before we get started, let me remind you about my method of reviewing, which involves a point system that is based on 3 fundamental attributes: the overall appearance of the M.O.C, the build of the M.O.C itself, and the concept and ideas behind the M.O.C's creation. Each quality amounts up to 5 points, leading up to a final score that will be determined at the end of the episode. And please remember that this is all based on my opinion. So with that said, let's get this started. First off, I want to point out how cool it is that this M.O.C is easily recognizable as the Headless Horseman, at least for me. I mean, come on, you really nailed that look down. If for some reason you're not familiar with the Headless Horseman character, then just wait till later. We'll talk more about that when I bring up the concepts and such and such. But yeah, first thing that really caught my attention was this horse. Just the horse itself looks really good. Hands down one of the best horses I've seen created. It's insanely accurate, and the attention to detail is just really well appreciated. I wish there were actually pictures of the horse just by itself. The only thing I could find is just this work in progress photo from before it was even close to being finished. That said, it's a little hard to distinguish the horse from the rider, just at first glance though, it's not that hard. But since both the rider and the horse are the same color essentially, it can be a little hard to make out what's going on here. I think my favorite part about this horse is the head. I think this is just really well put together and it looks so carefully well designed. I also like that the horse has just this smooth texture all around. Just very consistent, and in portions such as the mane and the tail, it appears to be a little bit more detailed and kind of rough, which is great because then you can distinguish that from the rest of the body. Now, the horseman himself is a little bit more on the bland side. He's not bad looking at all, but he seems to be fairly generic. He's also got this smooth texture with all the Hero Factory shells and such kind of encompassing his body, with like little to no detail on it. And really the only characteristics that are on the rider are his chest plate, which has the decal on it that's not done by the builder, and this collar design here, which is pretty cool, and the inclusion of this cape that looks really nice. I almost didn't recognize this cape immediately, but then I realized that it was actually from the Zerg set released not too long ago. But yeah, aside from that, there's not much going on for the rider. I mean, maybe it makes a little sense if it's supposed to be based on a knight, since that's the impression I get from the sword and the usage of the Knight's Kingdom armor plates for the shoulders. But I don't really like how there's just practically no texture on any of the other shell pieces. There's nothing. It just looks really bland. It makes sense for the horse to have the nice and smooth looking shell pieces with barely any detail because, well, it's a horse. How much texture is really necessary? But for the horseman, I feel that not only would it look better if it had a bit more texture to it, if it had maybe some more detailed armor or something, but it would also make it a lot more distinguishable from the actual horse, because then you'd have this contrast from some simple, smooth-looking texture to this complex, highly detailed whatever. Well, you know, that aside, altogether, the Headless Horseman looks really good. Definitely not bad at all, and I would say that just, if anything, could have been a little bit better in these areas. Now, as far as the build goes, it's a pretty similar conversation that we're about to have here, where I really praise the horse. I think it's really well put together, very interesting and intricate, does its job perfectly without detracting from the actual appearance. It's all nice and complex yet solidified, a pretty clever usage of parts, and some nice posability thrown in there. From these posable hooves to the posable head and neck, kinda. Well, when the neck connects to the body, it doesn't look all that liberated to just move around, but pretty much everything else does. But man, wouldn't it be cool to see this horse just kind of lay its neck down, looking like it's about to run 1,000 miles per hour. But yeah, the horse, really well done. The horseman, not so much. He's pretty basic in this area too. Yeah, sure, it gets the job done. We have this nice solidified model constructed from a pretty basic usage of CCBS parts. And yeah, it does get the job done. It holds the MOC together just fine, but then that's kind of where it stops. Has articulated arms and everything else that a typical CCBS build would promise you, but then there's nothing really more to it. It doesn't look like it has some sort of complex build that is interesting to look at. The parts that were used here are pretty bland for the most part, and yeah, there's just not a whole lot to praise, but it does get the job done. But now all I want to see is just some more poses, because there are just not enough pictures of this creation, I swear to God. But now anyway, moving on to the concepts, what's the big idea behind this creation, you might be asking me? Well, as I mentioned earlier, this MOC is based on the Headless Horseman, a character derived from European folklore, and I mean ancient folklore. Like, I'm surprised if you don't know what this is, ancient folklore. Like, this is a pretty well-known entity thingy, almost like the Jesus to monsters, like, important. Since its conception, the Headless Horseman has been depicted in so many different interpretations and appearances that there really isn't a set in stone appearance for him. Like, there's no particular way that he's supposed to look, aside from being headless, wearing all black, and riding a black horse, and looking evil. I mean, pretty often you'll see that the Headless Horseman is donning old English style clothing, or he typically has a collar on him, kind of like how he does in the MOC. And sometimes he carries around a pumpkin in his hand. And really, that's just his most famous interpretation. He's almost like the Wendigo, or Chupacabra, or the Jersey Devil, where he's this mythological being that can just be depicted in his appearance in so many different ways, yet still has to meet a certain criteria, such as the all-black appearance and the black horse and blah blah blah. So anyway, enough backstory. Does this MOC meet that criteria? Yes, it does. It looks exactly how a Headless Horseman depiction would probably look. It's got the old black appearance with the black horse and the red eyes and then this collar and the cape and blah blah blah. Oh yeah, and then he has this sword instead of a pumpkin, which is a pretty cool take. But from this, I can't help but feel as though the builder could have been maybe just a little bit more creative with the horseman. Like, the main goal of making the Headless Horseman in the first place was knocked down. That's done. You did that perfectly fine. You got this headless black figure on this evil-looking black horse that looks just like how a black horse should look. Like, you got that part down. But as I mentioned earlier, there's nothing really that sticks out on the horseman. He's very basic and generic in both his appearance and his build. He doesn't really have much going for him except for this cool collar cape and this cool sword. But the horseman himself is very uninteresting. Like, he should probably be the star of the show, not the horse. And yet I feel like the horse is like the best thing ever about this MOC. But if anything, there should at least be a little bit of a balance. Like, I should be loving the both of them, but really, I only love the horse. So, enough with the rambling. I'm just gonna move on to the final scores and get this over with. So in terms of appearance, this MOC receives a 4 out of 5. Overall, this MOC looks really good. I've hardly found any actual flaws with the MOC's appearance itself, but I did dock off a point because I just wasn't feeling the look of the horseman. He's too boring. I love the cape and the collar and the inclusion of the sword, but that's all he has going for him. But the horse definitely makes up for all that. The horse looks awesome. As for the build of the MOC, I give it a 4.5 out of 5. For more or less the same reasons I gave for the score of the appearance. The horse, really good build, looks awesome. Horseman, very basic, but nothing much going for him. But I didn't take off a whole point because this is centered more on the build than the appearance, and everything here looks structurally sound. I just think that the builder could have been a bit more intuitive with the build of the horseman, and I really hope that that horse has a bit more articulation in his neck than it seems. And then finally, concept and ideas behind this MOC receive a 4 out of 5. I can't stress enough how boring I think the Horseman looks, and why I think it's important that the Horseman looks better than he does at the moment. Because right now he kind of looks like a headless hero from Hero Factory that decided to go pick up some random sword and hop on this really cool looking black horse. But the horse and the rider need to go hand in hand for this to work. But I feel like in this case it's all one-sided because the horse looks so freaking cool, and the Horseman, well, he's not the worst thing ever, okay? I'm just gonna make that clear. I don't think he's bad looking, but he's just not that interesting. But I will hand it to you, Mohamed, regardless, they still look really good together. And I bet they look awesome on whatever display you have them at the moment. So, let's wrap this up. Final score, 12.5 out of 15. This is a really awesome looking creation, and it's really well done. I just wish that some things could have been done a little bit better, and then we would have seen a higher score. So, all that said, good job, Mohamed, Marei, whatever. I'm sorry, I'm not that well cultured. But you made an awesome looking creation, and I do hope to see more out of you, and I do hope to see more out of the rest of you guys too. If you have a creation that you think is awesome and you want me to think it's awesome too, post it to our message boards under the LEGO Creations category, because I check out that place all the time, and then there will be a very high possibility of it catching my attention and possibly earning a spot in the MOC Spotlight in the near future. So keep that in mind. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.